everyone, and welcome to No Off Season. I'm Zena Cada.
I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And I'm Ben Pickman.
And today on the show, the 2025 W season was a pivotal year marked by record-breaking viewership, breakout rookie performances, and unexpected competitive parity. With the WNBA season in the books, we're taking a look at some of the major trends that have surrounded the league's unforgettable year. But first, I just want to say bravo. Applause all around. Ben and Sabreena absolutely held it down while I was out, and I appreciated just tuning in, listening to everything on the sites, on the scene. It was really, really awesome the way you guys were able to give us both the insight of what was going on around the league as well as what was going on within this finals. Because I think this is the first finals in which it felt like there was competing storylines going on at the same time. And I think you guys did a really great job of breaking that down. And I also love, scrolling down my social media feed, shout out Ashley Young and Bree just handling our social media feed throughout the entire, finals. They did a great job. I hope you follow them on social media, particularly on Instagram. And to my surprise, as I'm seeing Ben finding himself beside a certain GOAT. And I was just wondering, as A'ja Wilson peered over your laptop, was there anything that you were like, let me put this down, let me close this tab? Like, what was going on as you were looking, and A'ja Wilson is just casually with her pink tambourine and her ski goggles looking over your shoulder?
Well, it's a funny question because I think I actually showed her my laptop. As I
Yeah,
said
you kind of
on
peered it to her, yeah.
Friday night, I was like, A'ja, do you want to help me write this story? And she basically was like, what do you got? And I showed her. And I then was thinking about what were the notes that I had on my screen. I think there were some quotes like from a notes document from what Nate Tibbetts was saying or had said at his press conference when he was complaining about the officiating and his ejection. I think I had written some things down in shorthand that Mark Davis, who was talking as A'ja Wilson, filed into the room. That was another thing on my screen. Can you imagine if I had glowing paragraphs open about A'ja on my screen and then she was reacting to them? That would have been a very funny situation. I just really didn't know what to do in that moment. You couldn't do nothing or say nothing. And I also felt like someone was talking. Mark Davis was at the podium talking. I couldn't just sit there and act like nothing was happening. And I also saw all the cameras and all the phones come out all around me. So, yeah, I mean, I've heard from a lot of people about that moment, Zena. Friends who follow W, friends who don't. I appreciate all the comments, all the tags. Yeah, that was a memorable moment for me, this WNBA Finals.
I like your understanding that you couldn't do nothing because if you watch the video that's posted on the Athletic socials, you can hear Ashley whispering, do something.
That's hilarious.
Yes,
I listened to it. The first time I saw it, I listened to it I saw it without sound. So I'm gonna have to go back and listen closer. But I think you handled yourself well. I think this is an ad for privacy screens for your laptops. But overall, I mean, if there's one person looking at your screen, it's A'ja Wilson. Not too bad of a person beside you. That's awesome. I thought that was such a cool moment. And that whole celebration, it just seems as if A'ja Wilson continues to elevate in her ability to celebrate just being one of the best players and obviously her team being phenomenal. But staying on the topic of A'ja, I wanted to ask you guys, A'ja Wilson, 3 titles in 4 years, 3 MVPs. She is in the same category. Her and Bill Russell. Those are the 2 that have been able to get 3 titles and 3 MVPs in such amount of time. That's GOAT status. There's not much else you can talk about when you're talking about A'ja Wilson. I loved the meme of the GOAT with the A1s on, with the pink wig, and if you look at the back leg with a leg sleeve on, the attention to detail was phenomenal by fans. But when you think about what A'ja Wilson has done, what ways has her impact reshaped the power dynamics in the WNBA? Because remember, this team was 500 at All-Star break. And then they got beat by 53, and then they went on a 16-game winning streak to take the title behind A'ja Wilson.
I mean, she was pretty dominant before that streak anyway. A'ja Wilson has been consistently excellent even when the Aces haven't won titles. You think about last year, she was unanimous MVP when the Aces were eliminated in the semifinals and they were a 4 seed coming into the playoffs. So I think the one thing you can count on is the surrounding talent may go up and down, but A'ja Wilson is A'ja Wilson. And, she came into the league, a league that was, I think, set to be owned by Brianna Stewart for the next few years. And Stewie has, to her credit, done her part, right? She's won 3 titles, a couple MVPs, put her stamp on the league in the process. But like Asia's just surpassed her, like this was a player who, you know, came in, like she's got a lot of pedigree through USA basketball. She was playing up in USA basketball. Always a good indicator, actually, of players who are going to really shine is the ones who are playing up in USA basketball. And she wins the national title in college. She's rookie of the year right when they moved to Las Vegas. Just what perfect timing for the Aces to move to Las Vegas, honestly. Can you imagine Asia
Mm.
Wilson being marooned in San Antonio on the Stars? Like that would have just been such a waste of her personality and her talent. But yeah, I mean, she's just been consistently excellent and just gets better every single year. Like the Asia Wilson that we saw this season, box score wise, might be not as effective as she was last year, but like the things that she can do on the court, definitely more than what she was doing last season. And it's crazy to think
Sure.
that she's just in the middle of her prime, continuing to evolve, and she's already maybe the greatest player we've ever seen.
The thing that sticks out to me, and this is really a question I've been thinking about since Friday night, was if you were going to put a Vegas betting line on the number of titles that Asia wins from here on out, if I set that line at 1.5 more titles, would you bet the over or the under in her career?
Over, yeah.
Right. So she's played 8 seasons. She's won 3 titles. Rebecca Brunson currently is the WNBA's all-time winningest player. She's won 5 titles. And think about the ease with which both of you, see, I'm just recovering from the finals, just said over. Like right off the bat, if you just throw 2 overs right there, that's 2 titles. She's ties Rebecca Brunson for the winningest player of all time. And you guys didn't even bat an eye about that happening. She's 8 seasons in. She's 29 years old. Like, who knows how long she is going to play? It's pretty remarkable just to put it in some perspective, just like that. The other thing I've been thinking about too, in terms of all time great winners, Chelsea Gray is sitting there with 4 titles, right? She's an older player, older, and we'll see how many years she has left. But like, could Chelsea Gray, could the Aces win 2 more titles in the next 4 years? I'm just really throwing things out. And Chelsea Gray, like, is a part of 2 of those. And does she retire as the all-time winningest player in WNBA history? Like, that was another just hypothetical that I was thinking about that I know I hadn't thought that much about during the series, but it is pretty remarkable when you put it in some perspective, and you put it in some perspective about how much things have changed just over these last 4 or 5 years, right? I mean, I think it was one of the questions that I asked Asia about throughout various points of the finals of what do you remember about your first finals appearance in 2020? And she used the word broken, referring to being swept by the Seattle Storm. Think about how much has changed from that moment, not just broadly around the league, but in her own legacy, having won these 3 in the last 4.
And then you think about the fact that Jewel Lloyd, that was part of that team that swept her, now being a part of the win that she just completed. I
Jewel
mean,
Lloyd does not know what it's like to feel broken in the finals.
at all.
Not even
Not
a
at all.
little.
10-0 in the finals, which I did not realize. I recently just saw a tweet that, Sue Bird went 11 straight, which after losing her first series in the finals, unbelievable. Something about Seattle that I think, obviously you think about dynasties, you mentioned Rebecca Brunson. This is now the question of the GOAT. And I'm thinking about Rebecca Brunson in connection to Maya Moore and people thinking about titles and accolades and racking them up. And of course, we know that Maya Moore had a much shorter career than we probably expected her to have. And now Asia Wilson's going to play. She's playing in her peak, in her prime, like, and she's so young still. We imagine she's going to have a much longer career than Maya Moore, and she's going to be able to
Asia's
rack up a lot
currently
more
the age
accolades.
that Maya was when she stopped playing in the WNBA.
There you go. There you go. And she doesn't look like she's anywhere near stopping. She's added the 3 ball to her game this season. She's added, I mean, I don't know if she's really added more footwork. She already had tons of footwork, but she's added more, even it looks like agility to her game at this point in her career. So yeah, I absolutely think she's capable of that over 2, or over 1.5. And what's interesting though, to your second point, Ben, all of this is dependent on free agency. And I don't know if we've seen a free agency like this in years, with this many veterans that are going to be free agents, this many people that, regardless if Vegas is able to try and keep their core together, other who's going to be that surrounding cast. Aaliyah Nye is the only person that is signed right now, I believe, to the Las Vegas Aces. That is crazy. So that, you got to think about what those type of elements are going to impact the Las Vegas moving forward, and how does Asia and her dynasty continue? I'm pretty sure you put on Asia on any team, she's going to kill it, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, can I just say too? I mean, on that point of the trio, and I think I might have written this, but I think it's important to say as it relates to free agency. Nikki Fargas, who's the team president of the Aces, she told me and Sean Hurd of Anscape throughout the series, like, one, that she's putting that trio up against anybody's
Mm.
else's all time in WNBA history. But she also said point blank that, we want to continue to have those three. And she said, quote, there is no desire to do anything but do our best to make sure that we sign them back to the Aces organization. So, if there was any question about who the Las Vegas Aces are targeting in free agency, it is to make sure that Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, and Jackie Young are back with the team next year. And I assume in subsequent seasons, knowing just how important they are to all the winning that has occurred over these last couple of years.
Yeah, Nikki Fargas knows who Destiny's Child is. She knows to keep the group together. All right, guys, we got to take a break real quick because we're going to talk about some of these trends that we saw over the course of the WNBA season. So we spent all season long following the W, and now it's time to zoom out and talk about the trends that stood out to us. The WNBA saw a significant rise in popularity and fan engagement during the 2025 season. Ben, you actually recently wrote about a new generation of fans embracing the W. Talk about this new generation of fans. We actually saw the perplexed face of one that I can particularly remember in Game 3 that kind of went viral, of just a young boy in the crowd just shocked at the comeback that Phoenix was making. This is not just that moment. We're seeing tons of younger boys, younger girls, new fans, all generations. But how has the league been able to capture this newfound audience?
Yeah, there's really been an influx of Gen Z and younger millennial viewers coming into the WNBA's fan base over the last two seasons. And I wrote about this on the site for the end of last week. One of those big groups over the last 5 years is young boys, U18 boys, under 18 boys. The league has seen a plus 130% growth in that demographic in terms of national viewership since 2021. So that is obviously pretty sizable. And they've also seen a jump in young girls, 18 girls 18 or younger watching the league. That has more than tripled, I guess, in 2024 alone, year over year. So that was the largest single increase for a particular age and gender bracket last season. That's a huge spike. And so, yeah, there's a lot more young viewers who are gravitating to the WNBA than ever before. And there are a number of reasons for that I kind of dove into in this piece. I mean, the big one is obviously social media and social media connectivity. And we have just seen a lot of young people on social media, gravitate to the content, to the accessibility, to social media serving as an entry point for these fans. That is a big thing. We've seen video games and sneakers, right? When you think about Angel Reese fronting the latest cover of NBA 2K, when you think about Sabreena Ionescu and the popularity of her sneaker, just as an example, that's a big one. We see for a slightly older audience, sports gambling is another factor that draws in the attention of younger male audiences. That's a big thing. And one other new change that I think, one executive at the WNBA pointed to that is really worth watching going forward is these kind of generational fans. That the WNBA, as it nears 30 years of age, is starting to have fans whose younger fans whose parents might have been fans of the WNBA in 1997, 98, 99 as the league was getting going. Some of those people now might be having kids who are, 7, 8 years old and getting into the WNBA, and they have their favorite players. And so that is one shift to really watch going forward. And it is part of this trend of, again, the influx of younger viewers and fans to the league more broadly.
When you're thinking about these new fans, Sabrina, how, I mean, I think sports gambling is a very particular way to interact with the league. But from what I'm gathering, like, this is basically saying it's cool to support women's sports, but particularly women's basketball. Like, and it feels as if the way that they're engaging is not only just going to games, but like they're commenting, they're reposting their favorite players. Like, how are you seeing folks engaging with in this new audience with the W?
I think social media is such a big part of it because female athletes are just more accessible online, I think, than their male counterparts. And they're really good at using their online platforms to engage with their fans, to connect with their fans. Um, it's just, they feel a lot more relatable, accessible than their male, counterparts in professional leagues. And I think that's just been a big draw in terms of, oh, I like, feel like I can actually figure out who, Asia Wilson is off the court or whoever it happens to be.
Mm.
So I think that's a big part of it. Just the gains that we've seen, in terms of that entry point in fandom. The gambling part truly scares me. I read a terrifying article the other day about men gambling on women's menstrual cycles,
Menstrual
their athletes'
cycles.
menstrual
I
cycles.
did
Yeah,
see
which
that.
you can
Oh,
gamble on anything,
so
apparently.
disgusting.
Um, and, the WNBA, like most sports leagues, still has had historically male fandom, right? The fact that, like, younger generations are coming in is kind of new, but, like, men following sports has always been part of it. And I hope that we're entering a period where, like, they're not just in it because you can gamble on these ridiculous prop bets, but they actually like the sport. And, one of the fun things that we got to do at the finals when Ashley was there was just, like, talk to some of the fans about why they were fans of the league and, what got them into it. And it was just like, yeah, maybe it was Caitlin, but, like, now I really like enjoying watching Asia Wilson, and, like, Paige Beckers is pretty cool too. And, like, I remember hearing about Cheryl Miller back in the day, and, like, I live in Phoenix. She used to be a coach for our team. Like, why not try to figure out who this, franchise is here? So there's a lot of different entry points, and I think they're becoming a little bit more enjoyable, I would say, a little bit more tasteful than some of the other ones back in the day.
I talked to the growth lead, I guess the growth strategy lead at the WNBA, Katie Donovan is her name. And one of the points she made to me, and this didn't make the piece, is that the definition of what like the core fan is in the WNBA has changed. And by definition, I mean like the literal kind of specifications of like you need to watch X amount of hours to be in the top, say 20% of like WNBA consumers. Like that has changed over the last year or two, that they're having to like redefine the actual terms of what does it mean to be a core and committed WNBA fan. That just speaks to, again, as you're talking about, Sabreena, the like wave of influx of interest and this era where things are changing so quickly. I thought that was like pretty interesting to think about when you zoom out. And one of the things she talked about too is families. That is another key area that the league is looking to tap into and is they recognize as super important to the long-term sustainability, to the growth and success of the WNBA. And we have also seen teams recommit resources like never before to drawing in young kids and drawing in families. I think for a long time, and we joked about it over the summer, camp days were like the big bit, right? Like if you get a fan in, get a kid in, an 8-year-old to come during their day camp day in July to watch the WNBA, like would that create a fan? And now we both see teams still doing that, but we see a lot more. We see the Dallas Wings since 2023, they've held 10 times as many camps and clinics as they previously hosted. Their practice facility is designed to have multi-purpose spaces for youth programming. We see the Connecticut Sun, they have a youth basketball platform. They had nearly 2,000 kids that they serviced this past year. That's up from 500 in 2021 and 2022. We see in Brooklyn, Barclays or Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment, that's the parent company of the Liberty. They just opened this multi-court youth basketball training facility across from the arena. Like that's supposed to provide access to kids over time and create this like pipeline. Like a lot is changing and we have seen teams continue to invest in it. That is definitely one major positive trend off court from this year.
One thing I do love about the ways in which teams, particularly, it's usually for the purpose of selling tickets, but it's also for the purpose of providing experiences. They are very smart in the way that they categorize potential fans. The families is usually one bucket, diehard fans is another bucket. And you can see this across sports. I remember we had these very similar buckets when I worked for the Miami Dolphins. But the other one that I think is particularly relevant for the WNBA is this social cultural bucket of where it's like, it's cool to go to the game. I don't know what's going on, but it's fun to be at Barclays Center on a Friday night, which it is. It is, by the way, guys, in case you didn't know, it is incredibly fun. But, we saw it across the country, particularly the Valkyries, very much leaned into the fact that they found a way to sell out the arena based on tapping into all of these different buckets. And teams have been doing it for years. And I think it's just elevated another level because of what Sabreena mentioned: accessibility, visibility. When you make it easier, wow, shocker. If it's available to see on television, maybe people will tune in. Surprising. Well,
I
I'm
can't
not
tell
going to
you
get too much
how
of
many
that because
times I
that big
talk to
deal.
people about, like, watching the WNBA. They're like, "Yeah, I only watch the national TV games." It's like, yeah, that's how people watch games.
That's how people watch.
That's
Yeah,
the only
that's
way it
fine.
happens.
That's the only way. There you go. Well, another way, another trend that's revolved around the league's exponential growth is the merch. And not just the merch that the WNBA is selling, it's the merch that's coming from the players themselves. Because we just talked about this trend and new viewership and new audiences, these new audiences are feeling connected to these players. And these players are showcasing themselves on social media in a way that you feel connected to their stories. And so when they're creating things, you wanna buy it. You wanna be a part of it, and one of those big things is player shoe deals. Now, it's been a while, since Sheryl Swoopes became the first player, uh, women's basketball player to have a shoe deal, but now there's been a ton over the course of the years I'll say a dozen or few, over the course of years, but now they're coming out in droves. This year alone, Asia had the most phenomenal campaign for her A1s, ending up obviously winning the WNBA Finals in them. Um, Reebok launched the Angel Reese ones, New Balance with Cam Brink, and Caitlin Clark's signature shoe. Skechers did their big ones with Jackie Young and Rakia Brink and Lexi Brown. Like all of these shoe deals coming out, whether Nafisa Collier with Jordan Brand. Like there's such opportunity now to get connected to a player through something that's actually useful out on the basketball court, not just, a makeup deal or a clothing deal, or it's actual shoes that people want to wear. And we know the Sabrina Ionescu's shoe, the Sabrina ones, the Sabrina twos, were tremendously successful. NBA players wore them just as much as that WNBA players wore them. It was very, very popular of a shoe. But now that is just the blueprint. I mean, Caitlin Clark's shoes are coming in 2026. People are super excited about that. Let's talk a little bit about these recent shoe deals and how it's elevated because of the branding of these WNBA stars. And what does it say for the league's commercial appeal?
I mean, I think it builds what we're just saying. Like shoes are another entry point for a younger generation of fans, right? It is exactly that. It's another way Sabrina was saying to create this connectivity, to create the I don't know the recognition to build off a player's creativity when they're designing a shoe or when they're coming out with a player edition, which is the case of a lot of the players you also mentioned, Zena, and gravitate to the player, to their brand, to their persona. Like it is another to me, it's just another one of those entry points that bridges the gap and draws in young viewers.
And it's fair to say that, Asia's shoes, A1, she had player editions of those, but the A1s were her signature shoe from Nike. Reebok has their signature shoe with Angel as the Angel Reese ones, whereas some players are getting brand deals with shoe companies like Skechers is having or like New Balance is having. But that is important to note. There's a difference between the signature shoe and a brand deal in which a player is wearing a brand shoes. But I think that this could extend past the player shoes. Um, you're seeing new brands show up in the WNBA space that have never been a part and been a partner or a sponsor. Sabrina, you just talked about the fact that the WNBA stars do a better job, and I agree with this, in connecting with their fan bases through social media. They're technically more available, I would say. They're more responsive online, and I think that that really probably shines bright in the minds of marketing managers all around the country of, "Here are our ambassadors available to us, not only rocking what we want them to wear, but also being able to talk about it, being able to showcase it, being able to tell the story around it." How are these deals, like player shoe deals, like player brand deals, how is this helping the league overall in terms of its commercial success, and the viability of the league?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that, if you're a marketing person, you're thinking like the best person I can get to sell my product is going to be a female, like Gen Z millennial who knows how to use social media. And lo and behold, athletes comprise a big portion of that. And they've grown up on this. They know exactly how to get their messages across on social media and sell things. And, I'm sure a lot of athletes are pretty good about staying off of the comment sections, during the season when it would disrupt their actual play and performance. But they have managers, they have people who are good at, taking care of this stuff when they're trying to log off a little bit. But yeah, I think it just makes so much business sense to invest in WNBA players and NWSL players and just female athletes of all sports in this age because, you know, a lot of them are now from the NIL generation. They've grown up, doing this for a very long time, like selling themselves, selling products, selling a story that goes along with all of it. And it helps the WNBA when you see your players all across the spectrum, right? Like you see them on billboards, you see them in ads for different products, like you see them just omnipresent, right? Like just more visibility, as you said, turns people toward the league. Um, and it's not just brands that are separate from the WNBA, right? Like I just think about how much easier it is to get actual WNBA merchandise now than it was a couple years ago. Like
Mm,
remember when we were talking about Candace Parker like not being able to find her Chicago Sky jersey even after she won a championship, and like
crazy.
the Aces made such a big deal of it that like, oh, we have a team store now and you can buy Candace's jersey right here when she signed with the
Hmm.
team. And like, I can't remember if I shared the story on the podcast, but I think about this all the time when like the Sparks signed Alyssa Peely on a 7-day contract. And like literally 3 days later, I saw somebody in an Alyssa Peely jersey at crypto.com arena. And it's like, that is unreal.
Impressive.
Like, how is this
Yeah.
possible for somebody to have this bit of merchandise? I mean, I wouldn't give it a second thought in the NBA, but it just hasn't been the experience of the WNBA. And so like when you are a fan, you want to, like Ben said, there's so many entry points, right? And one of those is like people like merch, people like jerseys. And it can be a turnoff when you're like, I'm trying to be a fan and it's really hard, right? It's really hard to find their games. It's really hard to find things that help me support this team. And if you make that experience of being a fan easier, it just helps keep people in.
Lowering the barriers to entry. Guys, it's a very key business point that seems pretty simple, but apparently sometimes can be hard to execute. Now, I'm gonna give the WNBA their credit for making jerseys more available. I'm gonna need them to work on their sizing available. Okay. Sometimes it's like you want a stud buds jersey and it's like the only available size is extra small. Am I speaking from experience? I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, let's shift to a trend that saw an increase in the 2025 season, and that is a record number of international players on rosters. Now, towards the midpoint of the season, there were 24 true international players that we counted. These are players that did not play in the NCAA that were born overseas. So we're not including the likes of like Satu Sabali that was born overseas, but played in Oregon, was able to be evaluated by, and WNBA scouts here in the States. I'm talking about players that were grown in, fed, and developed in programs that we didn't know about. And everyone's, waiting on Ben Pickman to write about them in order them to find out what's going on with this player. These are true international players. That last year, there were only 14. This is the most since 2005, based on that metric of players that did not play in the NCAA, that are from overseas, that have come over to play in the W. What's been the draw there? We know what's keeping American players, stateside, especially with the change in the prioritization rule, but that's not necessarily the case for the international players. What's going on there?
For me, building off the conversation we were just having, it starts with entry points and kind of the cultural cachet of the WNBA. Like I wrote this story at the, I guess, towards the beginning of the season about why there were more international players in the WNBA. And one of the overarching reasons that that story hits on in talking to players and executives is just like more people are watching the WNBA, and abroad it is frankly just like cooler than it has ever been. And the perception of the league has changed drastically. Not only are players about to get paid more than they ever have before, and that is certainly a driver, but more fans are going to games. Arenas, as a result, are filling up. The environment in arenas are filling up. The experience of being a professional has totally changed. Think about travel, think about hotels, think about treatment, medical resources, all those things. As there is more investment and more eyeballs on the game, the experience of being a professional in the WNBA is very different than it has been. I think what is so telling, and this was, more than the number you threw out, Zena, is that this season, at the start of this season, 18 players, international players, were in their first or second years. Right. And so it's not only that there are more international players who are coming to the WNBA, but there are more younger players. And that is a reflection of, again, all these things we've just been talking about, that from the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, the league is getting younger because there's this influx of young international talent that has now, as they've been progressed through high school or academies, thought about the WNBA in a way that a generation 10 years ago maybe didn't.
And part of it's just there are more roster spots, right? Like there's another team that came in, like there's more availability to actually like have a landing spot in the WNBA. Training camp rosters are a little bit bigger. You actually have a chance to earn a spot on a WNBA roster during the regular season. And, you mentioned prioritization earlier, Zena. It's kind of had the reverse effect on international players because so many of them
Yeah.
like got to play against the best American players when they went overseas during the WNBA offseason. Now that opportunity isn't there as often. So if they want to play against the best players in the league, or the best players in the world, I should say, to develop their game to get better for international competitions, like they have to come to the WNBA to do that. And so WNBA, like, criticize its methods on how it got here is like exclusively the best talent in the world. And if you want to compete against these players, you have to come to the W.
I really want to give credit to the GMs that did a great job of developing the pipeline as well, because it wasn't just Ben. You make a great point of like there's younger players coming in. We saw basically Team France just come in and do damage on the WNBA this year with all their young players coming in. But Jonathan Kolb in New York and Nick Uren in Phoenix and Ohemanyana in Golden State. Like there were some teams that seem to have all of the international players available to them in their training camps, and then they kinda dispersed from there. Um, what how much do you think that teams are going to be shifting to committing their strategies into seeking international talents, being more involved with these WNBA academies, and just scouting overseas now that they've seen what these players can provide?
Well, I'm just gonna kind of, and I know this might have been a slight slip. These teams, they're not developing the pipeline. They are tapping into a pipeline
Tapping
that
in,
other
thank
people
you.
have
Yes.
developed. And that is a key distinction about this
Mhm.
era and what we're going to see going forward. Because frankly, a lot of WNBA teams still use international academies and international clubs as developmental training grounds, pools for the WNBA. Like that is what happened in the case of the Phoenix Mercury, right? They were not drafting these players and necessarily
They don't do
developing
draft picks.
them right, a la an NBA and an NBA G League team. They are basically looking at the world and saying who has developed over the last X number of years that we now can bring into our system. In New York, we've seen them utilize a lot of draft and stash players for that same reason. We might not have the roster spots, a lot of teams are saying, to draft an international player and bring them in, but we trust that if they play for X club or Y club or Z club in Europe, then they can develop, and in 2 or 3 years we're going to bring them over. Like that is kind of the approach that a lot of teams have. And that's not dissimilar to what we sometimes see in the NBA, where, you'll see a high draft pick who is a foreign player get picked in the, top 5, top 10 and spend a year or two overseas before coming over. But that's a clear distinction right now in the WNBA. I think a lot of teams are starting to increasingly recognize the talent that is out there, but there is still this push and pull about who is developing that talent and how early can we bring them in to our WNBA system.
And I think it's worth saying, like, there's a difference between developing talent and developing the talent and developing the pipeline, right? Like, yes, these teams are not developing the talent, but there are teams that are doing the work to find the scouts overseas to ensure that they've got people on their teams. I think particularly about the Valkyries, Vanya Cernovitz, like being a part of the NBA academies for so long and placing talent, having Ohemanyana bring her on to her staff to be able to have that knowledge of what's available out there, who should we be looking at, that does feel like a muscle you have to flex for people to be like, yeah, go to the Golden State Valkyries or go to New York, to the New York Liberty or go to, you know, the Phoenix Mercury. That to me, I'm more impressed with the Phoenix Mercury because Nick Uren, Nate Tibbetts, like that's a new duo in Phoenix to be able to have brought in um, a Catherine Westbeld and a Monique Aquamakani, like a Lexi Held, like they brought in a lot of talent that you're like, okay, like this is impressive that you've already developed a pipeline of talent to come in, not develop the talent. You see what I'm saying?
Sabrina, do we feel like Nick deserves credit for bringing in those players, or does someone else take the lead on that?
So I feel like I wrote a lot about this during the regular season, and I want to link that in the show notes. But just a couple of things here. One, I think these teams would quibble with the fact that they are not still developing the talent. Like a player like Monique Makani, who comes over from France, and plays in the WNBA for her first season. Yeah, she is better than a natural undrafted free agent that you would get out of college, sure. But her highest level of play in France was basically like Division 2 playoffs before she got to WNBA. So like her getting to play against WNBA competition for 44 games and then go through to the WNBA finals, like there is real development opportunity there that they believe that they are, putting into her, right? I think that's a big part of it. Um, and then the second thing is like you just see these teams have so many more resources, like more front office people, more
Mhm.
money that they can use to actually travel overseas and watch these people play in person and get to know them in person, right? Like I remember Nate Tibbetts saying during the offseason, like, these guys were getting tired of seeing me in person. I was there so often. And like that just wasn't the case before. Like I'm thinking 2 years
Yeah.
ago, like the Sparks didn't have the infrastructure to send people overseas. Like they were still doing Zoom meetings with everybody, right? Whereas Phoenix, like they have all the statistical software to look at these players, but they also can send Nate and Nick and like their assistant general managers to Europe all the time to watch them play. And it's just the growing of the business, right? Like if you have more resources, you can expand your pool of potential players who could play in the WNBA.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that this is only going to get bigger as the WNBA's global footprint continues to expand. And I mean, we're already seeing people are trying. I mean, this is a completely different topic for another day, but like Project B is a thing where they're trying to get a W like league started internationally. People are seeing the benefit of bringing this game to other spaces around the globe, and having these international players as your ambassadors to the WNBA feels like it could only be a positive thing, to continue to grow the awareness of the league. But I guess my question to you guys is it's great to be able to have all the international players come into the W and showcase how great the globe is at basketball and how the rest of the world is catching up. But how much does the WNBA kind of extend their tentacles out in terms of their marketing, the awareness that they're bringing to the rest of the world, um, utilizing these ambassadors and making sure that it's an even exchange so it doesn't feel like everyone's going to the WNBA, but there's nothing kind of coming back out?
I don't
I
really
mean,
think they
I
care
think
about the exchange part of it. Like this is WNBA trying to grow its brand. Yeah, they can talk about international footprint in terms of like putting games in Canada and maybe like a future game in Mexico. But uh, I mean, if I'm an owner in WNBA or if I'm in the league office, like I'm not terribly concerned with like people in Europe watching the league right now. Like this is you're trying to grow the product in your own sphere of influence, I would say. And if that means like you want Europeans to come over, you want Australian players to come over, from all over the world, like it doesn't necessarily have to be a two-way street, right? Like they're benefiting a lot more from the influx of talent.
we also haven't seen, I mean, the WNBA has talked about wanting to continue to globalize. We're still waiting on, and maybe Dominique Malanga is going to be that player, like
Mm,
international stars to really take over the WNBA. Right now, over the last decade, the league has only had 4 All Stars who were born outside the United States. We'll see if that changes, but in terms of, the kind of where the talent is concentrated right now and how it has starred in the WNBA, it is still very much American born talent compared to the NBA, which is obviously a whole different story.
right. It's getting very global over in the NBA, but I think the Olympics showed us a lot for both sides, men and women's, just growth internationally and homegrown talent. Okay, let's keep it going with these trends. Sabrina, we feel as if the WNBA has elevated its talent, right? Like we've seen some unbelievable stat lines. Earlier, you mentioned Asia Wilson being dominant. Sure, her numbers weren't as good as they were last year, but there were some crazy stat lines that came out of this season. But overall, it feels like things got a little bit more balanced this year. What are your thoughts on a trend around parity?
Yeah, I think from a team perspective, we're seeing just a little bit more of a concentration, like more of middle than there was in previous seasons. I look at like a WNBA team, and I think a net rating of like +5 means you're like a pretty good team. Like a +10 probably
Mhm.
puts you like a really good team, but +5 puts you as a pretty good team. And we had like 5 of those last year and only 3 this year with more teams. I think there's just more of like decent teams, right? And then like you're sort of losing the really great teams. I find it just interesting that like even the teams that met in the finals this year, usually you get 2 teams that like have a +8 rating or like a +10 rating, and that's been the case for literally every finals of the last 5-6 years other than 2021, which is a weird season, post-pandemic. Everybody was sort of figuring their stuff out. But like the Las Vegas Aces and the Phoenix Mercury had net ratings of 3.9 and 3.2 during the regular season. So I think it's
Wow.
just interesting that like the WNBA has historically been this league where like you have dominant teams during the regular season who just continue that dominance into the playoffs, right? And that just wasn't the case at all this year. And maybe that's an exception. Maybe the Aces are just an exception, that like they're proving that there is a possibility to be a flip the switch team, that you can muddle your way through half the season and then just figure it out in the second half. Like Marcus Thompson mentioned on our last podcast, they almost like muddled their way through half the playoffs and then figured it out, right? So maybe Vegas is just like a historic playoff riser. Like they just get better every year because they have that ridiculous star power, because they have a coach like Becky Hammon. But I do think it's interesting that just on the whole, usually like the thing that I love about the WNBA playoffs is that it's not that there aren't any upsets. It's just that we get really good teams at the end of the season that are just titans battling each other in the final game of the year. And this season, I think the Aces are a very good team. It's just they don't have the profile of like what has been a great team historically. And I wonder if that's going to continue as, the talent continues to dilute to more teams, or if this just is like a 1-year anomaly where like, hey, Las Vegas took a little while to figure it out and we'll get back there next year. But just something that I keep an eye on. Yeah.
Very interesting to note, too. I kind of felt this exact same thing about the NCAA women's season, right? In terms of thinking it's supposed to be the 4 number 1 seeds that are gonna go straight through, and that's it. That's where it's gonna land. It feels like there's a little bit more parity across the board of women's basketball happening, as talent just gets better and better and better. And, as Gina Oriema would say, you got more tennis ball kids that are more skilled, and have put in a lot more drills over the course of their careers, and it's interesting how that is actually playing out. And also spreading out of talent, that's gonna be really interesting to watch in this free agency for the parity conversation. Which teams are gonna be able to keep their core 3, their big 3 or whatever, and who's gonna be able to attract talent to their teams. Okay, let's keep it moving to the last trend we wanna talk about, Ben, and that is the mid-range jumpers. Are they making a comeback?
Well, I was really going to highlight floaters because I think that is the part that is really kind of
Oh,
making a comeback. It also goes along the
okay.
lines of the middle, as Sabrina. It's building off this idea of the return of the middle because we saw that this year shots taken and the 3 to 10 foot range in the WNBA per Basketball Reference were up around 6% this year over year, and that's the biggest jump that we have seen in some time, kind of excluding 2019 and 2020, which had this like very weird anomalous bubble season, and it is up almost 10% from a decade ago. And what we have seen too is that a lot of star players, some of the best guards in the league, really are trying to refine this kind of shot over the offseason. They recognize the importance of it. Think about Sabrina Ionescu, who, in 2023, less than 15% of her shot attempts were coming in that 3 to 10 foot range. This year, around 25% of her shots were in that range. Jackie Young is someone who, throughout the finals, it struck me just watching her, she very much feels comfortable with that kind of mid-range floater as she attacks the basket. She's able to stop on a dime. Around 27% of her shots were from that range in her first year with Beckingham, and that's up to almost 36% this year. And she shoots almost 60% on such attempts. And we see a lot of these guards, the Odyssey Sims, the Dana Evans, who are able to get downhill and stop and shoot over bigger players. And that has become an effective tool. We've certainly seen 3-pointers continue to change and rise across the WNBA, but I continue to have my eye on like these guards as they continue to get more and more skilled. They break people down off the dribble and they're able to stop and pop and float it over players. I think that is a real weapon. And it's one of the big things that I'm curious if we're going to see going forward more in Caitlin Clark's game in particular, because she is a player who, we do not see that kind of shot with the same frequency as we do with some of the other players I just mentioned in her current repertoire. So that's definitely a potential area of improvement that I have my eye on as we look forward with her in particular.
I immediately was thinking about the aces, and I mean, the floater aspect is so true. I was thinking about the aces and just across the big 3, Chelsea, Asia, and Jackie, and their mid-range game. Their ability to operate right between the free throw line to the low block, they're lethal. Whether it's Asia's turnaround jumper, whether it's Jackie Young penetrating the paint and getting up, or getting past her defender and getting right to the front of the rim, which is the hardest shot, period, to make because you have no angle to it. And then, of course, Chelsea Gray just continuing her midi attack that we've known that she's always had. But I'm immediately thinking about Paige Beckers. I'm thinking about Courtney Williams. This mid game is coming back. I think it's making a comeback. And that is very exciting because now three-level scoring has returned. I love that. It's been for a while. Two at the basket or three behind the line. Not much of that in between. So love that. Love these trends. All right. On the other side of this break, we're going to close things out. We've got a game courtesy of Ben Pickman. All right, Ben, I'm going to let you take it away. Here you've got a game for the pod.
That is right, Zena. I think, we've just talked about some trends, things that we've observed throughout this season. And hopefully what I'm about to throw at both of you guys is stuff that you maybe have seen, but you maybe have forgotten. It's basically anomalous stat lines. It's some of the most unusual stat lines that we saw throughout either the WNBA regular season or postseason. I'm just going to throw out some statistics, basically, and I want you to name the player who recorded this said statistic. Pretty simple, right? Great.
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple. Let's test your memory here.
Pretty simple. We'll see. Right. Exactly.
I got a few to throw out. So, round one is that in Game 3 of the WNBA Finals, Dana Evans became one of just 3 players this season to foul out of a game in which she played fewer or less than 20 minutes. She did that. Cam Brink did it on September 1st. And then there was one player. There was one player who fouled out of a game playing less than 10 minutes per game, or 10 minutes in this game, rather. Any guesses on who that player was or any recollections of this pretty remarkable stat line? Just going to test your memory.
I feel like a big makes sense.
Who?
Just they're like in a big, like they're in a lot of actions.
Yeah, I feel like I'm thinking Natasha Mack or like Temi Fagbenle, or
I was thinking
I don't think Temi
Malanga
did it though.
off the bat.
The big is a good guess. I'm just going to reveal this one because I don't think you guys are going to get this one. Olivia Nelson-Ododa on July 27th. She played 9 minutes in a game. She had 6 fouls, 1 block, and 1 turnover. This has happened just 3 times.
Wow.
This has happened. It happened against the Golden State Valkyries. So, Zena, you probably were
Maybe
at that game.
I was thinking something, yeah.
So this is very rare. It's just happened 3 times in, I think, the last 7 or 8 years. Pretty remarkable. Okay, we're going to keep it moving. 3 times this season, players had 6 blocks in a game. That is the most of any single player in a game this year. That happened 3 times. Alana Smith did it. Izzy Magbagor did it. And this player who did it in late August. Any guesses on who the last player?
It's not A'ja Wilson. Otherwise, that would have been one of the answer choices.
Yeah.
Okay, 6 blocks, late August.
Why do I feel like it was a guard?
You think it's like Layla Lacan?
Yeah, like or like Sanaya Rivers.
Sanaya Rivers, yeah. Can we just give like a dual guess? One of those Connecticut guards?
Sure.
Yeah.
It is not one of the Connecticut guards, but Zena, you're very close. It was a guard. It was actually Ryan Howard. On August 29th, Ryan Howard became the first player in WNBA history to ever have 6 blocks and make 6 3-pointers in a game. She had 24, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, and again, the 6 blocks against the Dallas Wings. A pretty remarkable shooting night and defensive night for Ryan Howard. Luckily, it would have been a throwaway.
Ryan Howard. Yeah.
There you go. Maybe that's why. Keeping it going. 4 players this year had games in which, you might need a pencil for this one, in which they recorded 3 or more assists, 3 or more steals, 3 or more blocks, and had 3 or more turnovers. 4 players with 3+ assists, 3 or more steals, 3 or more blocks, and 3 or more turnovers. Ryan Howard did it. A'ja Wilson did it twice. Paige Beckers did it once. And can you name the 4th player? Anybody got a guess?
Good about my general
3 assists, 3
thought
steals,
process
3
here. I
blocks.
just keep losing the obvious names.
And 3 or more turnovers.
Okay, so we have Ryan, Paige, and
This is a
A'ja.
very De'Erica stat line, but I'm not sure.
We'll count that as your formal guess. Sabreena, you have one?
So probably not De'Erica Hamby.
Yeah, right? I know.
3+ assists, 3+ steals. I'm going to go Courtney Williams.
Courtney
Ooh.
Williams, a not terrible guess, but actually I was
Thanks,
looking
not
for
terrible.
Haley Jones. I was looking for Haley Jones, who did it against the
Why are
Golden State
all of these
Valkyries.
stats against the Dallas Wings?
Well,
Or
this was
the Golden
Dallas
State
Wings
Valkyries.
against the Golden State
Yeah.
Valkyries. She had 18, 7, 5, 3, 3, and 3 in early
That was like
September.
their last game, right? Against
towards the end of the season. A pretty remarkable game.
I think it was their
Was that
last.
the
It was
clinching
actually
game?
crazy because I think I hugged her mom on the way out of the gym and was like, "Holy crap, Haley was really good tonight."
What a game.
Yeah.
All right, we got two more for you, and then we will wrap up some of the craziest stat lines that we've seen this season. And if anyone wants more, feel free to tweet at me. I have a few more of these saved in my notebook that we will not be using. This is a game as a question. Only number one picks are the answer in this one. So I want the number one pick this year who had the highest plus minus in any game this season. And the highest, and it happened to be the highest number plus minus of any game since 2017 for a number one pick. Does that make sense? I think I just jumbled that a lot.
Only number one picks.
Is it
Yeah,
paid?
highest
Only
plus minus
number
in a
one
game
picks.
this season. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Was a plus 44. We'll give that to you.
Jeez,
Was that not Paige?
Paige could not have been a plus 44. Dallas?
Oh, that makes sense. No, yeah, they lost that game. Never mind. Think about that. Okay. I'm just thinking about
I'm
the
going to
time
be
that she
really
dropped
embarrassed
40.
if it ends up being Paige, but I can't imagine it was Paige in a Dallas game.
No, plus 44.
I feel like it's Jackie Young.
Number one. Well, who did they beat?
Zena just made a face for all the listeners at home.
No. I'm just thinking. I'm trying to think of like when that would have been. But that.
You're right. They didn't have a lot of big wins. Yeah.
They didn't.
No, they did not. Okay, well, what are our options here? We've got Jewel.
Yeah, right.
Stewie. Asia. I'm forgetting the 2017 number
Kelsey?
one pick. Who was the 2017 number one pick? Kelsey,
Was it
right.
Kelsey? It was Kelsey.
Probably not Kelsey, not plus 44 in a Sparks game.
Mm-mm.
Caitlin, Ryan Howard, Aaliyah
Caitlin.
Boston.
Ryan.
All right, final guesses. We got to keep
I'm going to
this
stick with
moving.
Jackie Young.
Plus 44.
Jackie Young. This player is actually Brianna Stewart, is who I was looking for. Brianna Stewart
what
on June
game?
1st, when the New York Liberty beat the Connecticut Sun 100-52. Remember, way back in June, there was a game that was
On
rivaling the biggest up. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
Zena.
it was on ESPN. I remember that. Yep.
23 minutes. She had just 13 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds, and she was a plus 44. All right, last one. Very simple stat here. This is a player who had the most rebounds in a game this season in which she did not score. Spoiler, she was also the only player to have more than 10 rebounds in a game in which she did not score this season. It is the same game.
I'm going to go 0 for 5 here, Zena.
I feel it, right? I'm like, dang. Did not score. I can't imagine Bree Jones not scoring. I feel like this might be a Valkyries player.
Well, I'm just going to call time on this one
Bree
because
Turner.
that's not a terrible guess, but you guys have gone 0 for 5 in this game. This player, Kia Stokes, went 0 for 5 in this particular game. Kia Stokes, 14 rebounds, 14 rebounds in 29 minutes in a Vegas loss to the Mercury on June 15th.
Their only loss to the Mercury all season.
Points. There you go. I brought it all the way back to the finals, everybody. That is what, that was an intentional choice to close this one out because, I had to start with Phoenix and the Aces, and we will round it out this episode with Phoenix
Well
and the
done,
Aces.
Ben. Well done. You completely stumped us. I don't know if anyone's listening. If you did better than us, leave us the review, leave us the comment, let us know. Because, that was rough, but it was a good one. I love that game. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we got for you guys today. And we will be back on your feeds on Friday with more of the W's major off-season content. Wherever you're listening, please follow our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, do your job, tell your friends to check us out. And while you're at it, give us a rating. And keep the bad ones to yourselves. We don't need to hear all that. Drop a comment. We love to hear from you. And of course, head on over to our partner, the Yahoo Sports Hub, for more content at sports.yahoo.com/women's-sports. On behalf of The Athletic, Ben Pickman, Sabreena Merchant, I'm Zena Cada, thanking you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to No Off Season. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.